My name is Eleanor, and I'm 62 years old. I've lived in the same colonial house on Maple Street for 35 years. The one with the blue shutters, and the garden that blooms with roses every June. My late husband Thomas and I raised our 3 children here. He passed away 4 years ago, and since then, the house has felt bigger somehow, quieter. I'm a librarian, or I was until I retired last spring. Spent 40 years shelving books, helping children find their first chapter books, watching generations of families come through those tall wooden doors. It was a good life, a simple life. Thomas always said I had a gift for making people feel seen, for remembering the small things that mattered to them. Our children are grown now. Margaret is 38, a real estate agent with sharp eyes and sharper ambitions. She married Derek, a pleasant enough man who works in finance. They have 2 teenagers, Olivia and James. Then there's Robert, our middle child, 35, a software engineer who moved to California and calls twice a year if I'm lucky. And Sarah, our youngest at 32, a nurse with her father's kind heart, married to Michael, a high school teacher. The house has been paid off for years, sitting on a piece of property that's become quite valuable, as the neighborhood transformed from working class to what the real estate agents call highly desirable. Margaret mentions this often, very often. It was 3 weeks before Christmas when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. I had driven to Margaret's house to drop off some hand-knitted sweaters for the grandchildren. I do that every year, spend months working on them, choosing colors I know they'll love. The front door was unlocked, as it often is, and I let myself in quietly, not wanting to startle anyone. That's when I heard Margaret's voice from the dining room, sharp and clear. Mom's house is worth at least $800,000 now, maybe more. That lot alone is a gold mine. We need to convince her to sell. I froze in the hallway, the shopping bag with the sweaters suddenly heavy in my hands. Robert's voice crackled through her speakerphone. She'll never sell, Maggie, you know how she is about that place. That's exactly the problem, Margaret snapped. She's sitting on a fortune while we're all struggling with our mortgages and college funds. It's selfish, really, when you think about it. Derek's voice joined in. What if we stage an intervention at Christmas? Get everyone together, present a united front. Show her she's being unreasonable. My heart began to pound, but I stayed silent, listening. I like that, Margaret said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. We'll do it on Christmas Day, in front of everyone. If she's embarrassed enough, she might actually listen. Mom hates confrontation. We can even have a realtor friend there with comps, make it look official. Sarah's voice, my sweet Sarah, came through another phone line. I don't know, Margaret, that seems cruel. It's her home. Oh, don't be such a pushover, Sarah, Margaret said dismissively. You and Michael could use the money just as much as the rest of us. Stop pretending you're above it. There was silence, and I imagined Sarah on the other end, hurt but too gentle to fight back. So we're agreed? Margaret continued. Christmas Day, after dinner, we all sit Mom down and explain why she needs to sell. We'll make her see reason. I backed out of the house silently, left the sweaters on the porch, and drove home with tears blurring the road ahead. That night, I sat in Thomas's old armchair, the one I can never bring myself to replace because it still smells faintly of his aftershave. I thought about all those Christmases we'd shared in this house. The year Margaret was 5 and insisted on leaving cookies shaped like reindeer for Santa. The year Robert broke his arm sledding and we spent Christmas Eve in the emergency room, laughing despite everything. The year Sarah directed her siblings in a nativity play in our living room, complete with the neighbor's dog as a very confused sheep. This house held every memory of the life Thomas and I built together. It held his voice in the creaky third step, his laughter in the walls, his love in every corner. And now my children wanted to turn it into a transaction, to embarrass me into giving it up. I didn't sleep that night. But somewhere around 3 a.m, clarity came. I wouldn't be humiliated. I wouldn't be ambushed. But I would give them a Christmas gift they would never forget. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Martin Hendricks, a kind man in his 70s, who had handled our family's affairs for decades. We had a long conversation. Then I made several other calls. I worked steadily and quietly for the next 3 weeks, and no one suspected a thing. Christmas arrived with fresh snow covering the lawn, the kind of picture-perfect scene that belongs on greeting cards. I spent the morning cooking, just as I had for decades. Turkey with sage stuffing, Thomas's mother's recipe. mashed potatoes whipped with real butter and cream, honey-glazed carrots, homemade rolls, apple pie and pumpkin pie cooling on the counter. The house smelled like every Christmas of my children's childhood, and for a moment, I let myself feel sad about what they'd lost somewhere along the way. When had they stopped seeing me as their mother and started seeing me as an obstacle to their inheritance? They arrived around 2 in the afternoon. Margaret came first with Derek and the teenagers, carrying store-bought wine and wearing the expression of someone preparing for battle. Robert flew in from California, looking uncomfortable in a sweater that didn't quite fit. Sarah and Michael arrived last, and Sarah hugged me longer than usual, as if she sensed something. We ate dinner at the long table Thomas built the year Margaret was born. I watched my family, really watched them, and saw the calculation in Margaret's eyes, the avoidance in Robert's posture, the guilt in Sarah's face. After dessert, as I started clearing plates, Margaret stood up. "Mom, sit down. We need to talk to you about something important." Here it was. I set down the plates I was holding and took my seat, folding my hands in my lap. Margaret glanced at her siblings, receiving nods from Robert and a reluctant one from Sarah. "Mom, we've been talking and we're worried about you. This house is too big for one person. The maintenance, the property taxes, the upkeep, it's too much for a woman your age." Woman my age, as if 62 meant I had one foot in the grave. "We think," Derek interjected, clearly coached, "that it would be in everyone's best interest if you considered selling. We've even contacted a realtor who can help. The market is excellent right now." I looked at each of them. Robert couldn't meet my eyes. Sarah was staring at her plate. Margaret looked triumphant. "We love you, Mom," Margaret continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "We just want what's best for you. And financially, this makes sense for all of us. We could help you find a nice apartment, something manageable." The silence stretched out. I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hall, the same clock that had marked every important moment of our family's life. "I see," I said finally, my voice calm. "You've all discussed this behind my back and decided what's best for me." "It's not like that," Robert started, but his voice trailed off because we both knew it was exactly like that. "We're your children," Margaret said firmly. "We have a right to be concerned about your welfare. And my house," I said quietly. Margaret had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but she pressed on. "Mom, be reasonable. You're sitting on a fortune. You could live comfortably anywhere and we could all benefit from my home being sold and divided among you," I finished. "That's not fair," Derek said. I stood up then, walked to the sideboard, and picked up 3 envelopes I'd placed there that morning. They were cream-colored, expensive stationery, each one addressed to one of my children. "Before you continue," I said, "I'd like you to open these. Consider them my Christmas gift to you." Margaret tore hers open eagerly, probably expecting a check. Her face went pale as she read. Robert opened his more slowly, and I watched the color drain from his face too. Sarah's hands trembled as she unfolded her letter. "What is this?" Margaret whispered. "It's quite simple," I said, my voice steady. "I've sold the house." The explosion was immediate. "You what?" Margaret stood so quickly her chair fell backward. "How could you?" Robert looked genuinely shocked. Only Sarah remained quiet, still reading. "I sold it 2 weeks ago," I continued. "To a lovely family with 3 young children. They're moving in after the new year. The sale was finalized yesterday. Those letters explain the details." "But the money," Margaret sputtered. "Our inheritance is not yours to claim while I'm still alive," I said, and for the first time I let some steel into my voice. "I'm 62 years old, Margaret, not 90. I'm in perfect health. I walk 3 miles every day. I volunteer at the library twice a week. I take art classes. I have friends, hobbies, and a life." "Where will you live?" Derek demanded, as if he had any right to ask. "That's explained in the letters," I said. "I've purchased a beautiful condo downtown, near the river. 2 bedrooms, plenty of space for me, modern kitchen, a balcony with a view. The building has a gym, a community room, everything I need. I'm quite looking forward to it." "And the money from the sale?" Margaret's voice was shrill now. I smiled then, and it was genuine. "I'm glad you asked. The profit from the sale, after purchasing my condo, comes to approximately $450,000. I could see the calculations happening behind Margaret's eyes. I've divided that money into 3 equal parts, I continued. Not for you, but for my grandchildren. Olivia, James, and any children Sarah and Michael might have in the future. The money is in trust funds, managed by Martin Hendricks. They'll receive it when they turn 25. To use for education, starting a business, buying a home, whatever they choose. You can't do this, Margaret said, her voice breaking. I already have, I replied. It's done, legal and binding. But we're your children. Robert finally found his voice. You deserve nothing that you didn't earn yourselves, I said. And my voice was sad now, not angry. I raised you to be independent, to work hard, to make your own way in the world. And you've all done that. You have good jobs, homes, families. What you don't have is the right to my home, my security, my peace of mind. This is because of what we planned, isn't it? Sarah said quietly. You knew. I looked at her, my youngest, who had at least the grace to feel ashamed. I came to your sister's house 3 weeks ago to deliver Christmas sweaters I'd knitted for the children. I heard everything. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Mom, I'm sorry, I told them it was wrong, but you went along with it anyway, I said gently. You are going to sit here today and participate in humiliating me, in pressuring me to give up my home. You were willing to hurt me to benefit yourself. The room was silent except for the clock and the sound of Sarah crying softly. I want you to understand something, I said, looking at each of them. I loved your father with everything I had. We built this life together, board by board, memory by memory. When he died, this house was all I had left of him. His workshop in the garage where he built you the dollhouse, Margaret. The growth chart on the pantry door where we marked your heights every birthday. The window seat where he read bedtime stories to all of you. My voice cracked, but I continued. You were willing to erase all of that, to turn it into dollar signs and down payments. You were willing to humiliate me, manipulate me, make me feel like a burden. And that breaks my heart more than you'll ever know. Mom, Margaret started, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. The new family who bought this house has 3 little girls. The mother cried when she walked through it. She said it felt like love lived here. She promised to take care of Thomas's garden, to keep the swing set he built for you kids, to honor what this place has been. That meant everything to me. I gathered the dessert plates, my hands steady. You're welcome to finish your pie. I'm going to clean up. And then I'd like you all to leave. I'll be spending the rest of my Christmas with people who actually care about me, not my assets. Where are you going? Robert asked, sounding lost. To Sarah's colleague Emily's house. She invited all the staff from the hospital who don't have family nearby. There will be people there who treat me with respect, who value my company, not my bank account. I walked into the kitchen and began running hot water for the dishes. Behind me, I heard chairs scraping, low urgent conversations, Sarah still crying. Margaret appeared in the doorway. Her face was red, angry tears streaking her makeup. You're really going to do this? Cut us out? I turned to face her. Margaret, I haven't cut you out of anything. I've simply chosen not to be bullied. I've chosen to live my life on my terms. And I've chosen to give my grandchildren opportunities you've already had. We needed that money, she said, and her voice was small now, defeated. You need to learn to live within your means, I replied. I did. Your father and I never had money handed to us. We worked, we saved, we sacrificed. We gave you the best childhood we could afford, sent you all to college, helped with your weddings. We did our part. The rest is up to you. She stood there for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her face. Maybe it was understanding, maybe just resignation. I'm sorry, she whispered finally. I'm sorry we hurt you. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't undo the hurt. That takes time and effort and proving that you've learned something from this. One by one, they left. Sarah hugged me goodbye, whispering apologies I wasn't quite ready to accept. Robert looked ashamed, couldn't find words. Derek and the teenagers seemed confused about what had just happened. When they were gone, I sat in Thomas's chair again and let myself feel the weight of it all. I'd lost something today, some illusion about my children, about family. But I'd also gained something. My dignity, my right to live my own life. My freedom from being seen as nothing more than an estate to be divided. The condo I'd bought was beautiful, modern and clean, with none of the memories that made this house both precious and painful. I could start fresh there, build a new life. I'd already joined a book club in the building, made friends with a widow named Helen who taught watercolor classes, started volunteering at a soup kitchen downtown. I wasn't ending my life by selling the house. I was beginning a new chapter. 2 days after Christmas, Margaret called, "Mom? Can we talk?" Her voice was different, smaller, uncertain. "I'm listening," I said. "I've been thinking about what happened, about what we did, and I'm ashamed." She paused and I heard her breath catch. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot who you are. I forgot that you're not just Mom, not just someone who exists to make my life easier. You're Eleanor. You're a person with your own dreams and needs and rights." I didn't say anything, letting her continue. "I got so caught up in money, in keeping up with everyone else, in making sure my kids had everything I thought they needed, that I lost sight of what really matters. I treated you terribly. We all did." "Yes," I said simply. "You did. Can you forgive us?" she asked. "Can we start over?" I thought about that. About forgiveness and family and what we owe each other. "I can forgive you," I said finally. "But things are different now, Margaret. I'm different now. I won't be taken for granted again. I won't be seen as a resource instead of a person. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be built on respect." "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll do better. I promise I'll do better." We talked for an hour, really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She told me about her fears, her money worries, the pressure she felt. I listened, but I also set boundaries. I would help her if I could, but not at the expense of my own security. I would be her mother, but not her safety net. Robert called the next day, then Sarah. Each conversation was different, but they all ended the same way, with understanding that our relationship had to change, had to be rebuilt on honesty and mutual respect. I moved into my condo on New Year's Day. Helen from down the hall helped me unpack boxes, and we drank champagne on my balcony watching the sunset over the river. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was mine. The family who bought my house sent me a photo a week later. Their 3 little girls were building a snowman in the front yard, right where I used to build snowmen, with my own children 40 years ago. The youngest was wearing a pink hat, laughing at something her sister said. The house looked happy again. I framed that photo and put it on my mantle, next to pictures of Thomas and our children when they were young. Before life got complicated, before love got confused with money, spring came, and with it, small changes in my relationship with my children. Margaret started calling every Sunday, just to talk. Not about money or houses or inheritance, but about her day, her worries, her joys. Robert flew out in March and spent a weekend with me, and we walked along the river and talked about his father, about regrets and second chances. Sarah came over for lunch twice a month, and slowly, carefully, we rebuilt what had been broken. They would never get that money they'd wanted. But they were getting something more valuable, a real relationship with their mother, built on truth instead of expectation. On Mother's Day, they came to my condo together. They'd clearly planned it, coordinated. They brought flowers and a card they'd all signed. But more than that, they brought apologies that felt real, promises to do better, and a willingness to see me as I truly was. We sat on my balcony, eating the brunch they'd brought from my favorite cafe. And for the first time in years, it felt like family again. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. "I drive by the old house sometimes," Margaret said quietly. "I see those little girls playing in the yard." "It's good, isn't it?" I said, "seeing it loved again?" She nodded. "I understand now why you sold it to them. Why it mattered that it went to people who would appreciate it." "Your father would have approved," I said, and I believed it. Thomas had always valued character over cash, love over leverage. As the sun set that evening and my children prepared to leave, Sarah hugged me tight. "Thank you for teaching us this lesson, Mom," she whispered. Even though it hurt. Maybe especially because it hurt. After they left, I sat on my balcony and thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. The pain of overhearing their plans, the courage it took to stand up for myself, the loneliness of those first weeks. And now, this tentative healing. I was 62 years old, and I'd learned that it's never too late to demand respect, to change your life, to start over. I'd learned that loving your children doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. That being a good mother sometimes means teaching hard lessons. And I'd learned that home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a choice you make, a boundary you set, a life you claim as your own. The condo was quiet around me, but it wasn't lonely. Tomorrow I had watercolor class with Helen. Next week the book club was meeting here. In 2 weeks Margaret and I were going to see a play together, just the two of us. My life was full. Not with what I'd lost, but with what I'd gained. Respect, independence, relationships built on honesty instead of obligation. I'd given my children a Christmas gift they'd never forget. Not money, not a house, but a lesson in dignity, in self-worth, in the difference between love and transaction. And in the end, that was the greatest gift I could have given them, because it taught them to see me, really see me, not as a means to an end, but as a person who mattered, as a woman who deserved respect, as Eleanor. And that was worth more than any house, any inheritance, any